Here we go again. Welcome everyone to the Joint Committee on Higher Education and Agriculture and the Environment. Today is Tuesday, April 19th. We're in room 225 and it's about 2:03 p.m. And our first is housekeeping measures. The meeting is being streamed live on YouTube and we'll cover the 2 p.m. Higher Education and Agriculture and the Environment Committee resolution hearing on GM, on the 2:05 p.m. Higher Education and GM hearings. Testifiers will be limited to 2 minutes each. And if there are temporary technical glitches during your turn to testify via Zoom, we may have to move on to the next person due to time constraints. We do appreciate your understanding and remind you that we do have the written testimony on hand, and I'll be reading from a list of individuals who submitted written testimonies for each measure. We do apologize if the closed caption does not accurately transcribe the names. If you're interested in reviewing the written testimony, you can go to the legislature's website. You'll find a link on the status page for the measure. In the unlikely event we have to abruptly end the hearing due to technical difficulties, the committee will reconvene on Thursday, April 21 at 2 p.m. in this room, 225, and a public notice will be posted on the legislature's website. With that, we are on House Concurrent Resolution 36. This requests the University of Hawaii to work with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and Department of Education to create a coral reef and advisory team of youth. And to my right is the chair of the Agriculture and Environment Committee, Senator Gabbard, and his members. You want to introduce your members?
Vice Chair of HRE-AEN is Senator Nishihara, and also employed by Senator Katsu, Senator Rhodes. Again.
Okay, and for higher education, myself as chair, Senator Michelle Kidani, vice chair, and Senator Gil Agaran as a member, and other members may be coming in. So with that, we will take a testimony for HCR 36. We have Melanie Jackson testifying for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. I don't believe that any of them are here in person or on Zoom. Ted Boland testifying for the Coral Reef and Oceanic Coalition in support. Lisa Bishop, Friends of Hanoma Bay in support. Dana Kiave, individual in support. Chris Schuler and Lupita Ruiz-Jones, individuals both in support. And we have from UH, Bonnie Owen with comments. And Calais, are you on Zoom? Okay.
Good afternoon. Yes, I am.
Welcome, Calais. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair Kim, Chair Gabbard, Vice Chair Skidani, and Nishihara. So my name is Calais Raposa, Interim Vice Chancellor for Administrative Affairs at UH-Hilo, testifying on behalf of Chancellor Irwin. UH-Hilo is we're in support of this measure. Specifically, the PRISM program is mentioned in the resolution. That's the Partnership for Reform through Investigative Science and Math program. So that's a program that was developed under a 3-year grant with the National Science Foundation. However, the funding for that grant ended in 2010. The materials that were developed, the curriculum resources that were developed remain available for teachers across the state on or through the UH-Hilo website. So we are supportive of the efforts, but because PRISM is mentioned, UH-Hilo is choosing to speak specifically to that. If this reso is seeking to restore that PRISM program, we would be requesting some funding for that. But you know, if this reso is looking at just restarting a conversation with UH-Hilo and NOAA and the Department of Education for pursuit of preserving coral reef and coral reef studies, then we are in support of that as well. And happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on this measure, either on Zoom or here in person? Hearing none. Members, Chair, any questions? We only have one person here. I guess, and I don't know who the appropriate person might be to ask this. Let's see, the House Reso, as to who would name this advisory team of youth. So it's just University of Hawaii and National. It's kind of broad. The resolution is quite broad. Chair, you have any thoughts on this? You're good. I'm sorry. Okay, we will, since there are no questions and nobody to really ask the questions of, we'll go into decision making. I just have a lot of questions on this reso. It doesn't really specifically tells us much other than they're going to decide on this advisory youth. It is a resolution. It doesn't have the effect of law, so I guess there's no harm in passing it out. So I'm going to just recommend that we go ahead and pass it out. Good with that? Okay. Any questions, members? Chair for the vote.
For HCR 36, recommendation of the chair is to pass unamended. Chair votes aye, vice chair votes aye. Senator Keith Agarat.
Aye.
Senator Wakai. Excuse. Senator Favela. Excuse. Measures adopted, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Same recommendation for AEN. Chair votes aye, Vice Chair.
Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Ocasio,
Aye.
Senator Rhodes,
Aye.
Senator Favela.
Thank you, members.
Thank you. We're adjourned. Good afternoon. We are now engaging in our 2:05 p.m. agenda for the Higher Education Committee. And I am not going to read housekeeping announcements because everybody heard it already. We'll go right into our first GM, which is GM 819, submitting for consideration and confirmation to Hawaii Commission for National and Community Service gubernatorial nominee Suzette Robinson for a term to expire 6/30/2024. And we don't have any testimony. Suzette, are you here?
Not present, Chair.
That is not present. Okay. With that, we'll move on to GM 820, submitting for consideration and confirmation for the Hawaii Commission on National and Community Service gubernatorial nominee Richard Setter for a term to expire 6/30/2024. Also have no testimony. And is Richard Setter here? Richard, you are here. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here and for your willingness to serve. Would you like to do an opening statement?
Just that, I was look forward to the opportunity to contribute to the Hawaii Commission and giving back to the state that I have been able to call home for the last 12 years.
How did you get or find out about this commission?
Nick Estrella, the director from the commission, reached out to me, and I had been in contact with him and worked with him throughout the process of developing the state plan for the Perkins 5 federal funding for career technical education. So he had reached out to me and asked me if I would consider the opportunity to serve as a commissioner.
Okay, well, we certainly appreciate your willingness to do that, as we know community service is so important, and appreciate you taking that time from your schedule to participate in this effort. So thank you. Members, any questions for Senator? Donnie, go ahead. Oh, did you have a question? Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you had a question. Okay, members, no questions. Thank you very much. We will move on to our next gubernatorial nominee, GM 807. And this is for consideration and confirmation to the Board of Regents for the University of Hawaii. Gubernatorial nominee Gabriel Lee for a term to expire 6/30/2027. And testifiers, we have Ray Vera from the Hawaii Pacific Health in support. I don't believe he's here. Let's see, Michael Kane, all of these people in support, Dina Dre, Stanford Carr, Kali Watson, Jeff Overton, Laurie Abe, Keith Harita, Christine Camp, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and about 12 others all in support. Anyone else on Zoom wishing to testify in this measure? And I don't think anybody else is in the room that's going to testify in this measure. So, Mr. Lee, welcome. Would you like to give an opening statement?
Thank you, Chair Kim, Vice Chair Kadani, and Senator Agaron. Thank you for having me. University has been a big part of my life. I've been an active supporter with the Shizer School, UH Athletics, and I have a pretty diverse background when it comes down to business lending, as well as community service. And then my board activities are pretty good, diverse group of boards, and had some education boards with St. Louis School. So I'm looking forward to serve UH and put in the time.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, questions for Mr. Lee?
I have a question.
Questions, Senator Aguilar.
Yeah, I think when we met in my office, we talked a little bit about your experience with St. Louis School, your alma mater, and at a time that was fairly challenging for St. Louis. Do you take anything from your experience at St. Louis that you think you'll bring to the university in terms of the kind of challenges that the university is facing at this time?
I think it's fairly similar when it comes down to the business aspects. There's alternatives for the students as well as the faculty. So at that time, the St. Louis, the enrollment went down due to some competitors. And then there was a change in management and then outside support that helped the school. And that was a tough time, but it brought everyone together, and the school is stronger now under Glenn Medeiros. But I think for UH, there is the same characteristics when it comes down to you need the enrollment, you need the faculty, but it's different where it serves the public interest, and it has to be affordable. So you put all that together, and then of course, it requires appropriations from the legislature too. So those make it different, but it still comes out to the revenues and expenses.
Well, how do you feel about the, I mean, you're looking at a 10 campus system with some very different needs and very different characteristics in each of the campuses. Like, for example, I think West Oahu has different challenges than UH Hilo, than the community colleges, and then Manoa, I suppose, thinks of itself as something separate and apart from the rest of the system. How do you do you feel like there's a need to, how do you think you'll be able to address properly navigating the competing interests between the campuses?
I think from the outside, it appears that it's more Manoa-centric, but when you look at the enrollment, it is spread out, and I didn't realize that the community colleges have such a large enrollment. So I think you have to put the funding and the resources where the need is the greatest. And the you've got the board of regents, and then you've got the president, but the chancellors run those various schools. And I think you need to have good management of each one of the schools, the 10 schools. And then, they can make their case for the budget and those type of things.
Since we've had constitutional autonomy for the university for, I think, a couple of decades now, what's the role of the regents in terms of either protecting that autonomy or implementing that autonomy in your mind versus the legislature getting involved in things that we feel are of statewide concern?
I think the regents could take a little bit more active or constructive feedback when it comes down to governance. It's not micromanagement, but it's governance of the president and then senior management. When I look at the involvement by the legislature, some of the issues could have been solved at, well, when the stakeholders have to go to the legislature, instead of it being solved by the president or the board of regents, that's where there could be a little bit more active management by the board of regents, so that the stakeholders don't have to go to the legislature.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dave, for being here. I appreciate the conversation that we had and the candid answers. And I was happy just now to hear you talk about the regents, being able to or have a better part in the management or management style, whatever university. You may know that the state funds the university millions and millions and millions of dollars each year. And it would be nice for us to see that the selection of chancellors at the various campuses are done fairly, and that they're held accountable for the campuses, whether they're present at the campus, or whether they are putting programs in place that are going to keep the students engaged, and make sure that if you have a campus like West Oahu, that you are going to engage the surrounding high schools and sort of try to champion the enrollment of students in the area to the campus. But you have to have a plan, a strategic plan to do all that, and to hold these chancellors accountable to make sure that that strategic plan, if they have one, is working, and if they don't have one, why not? And to look at the enrollment of the campuses to see why they are losing enrollment, why they have cut programs that were successful, and why they have not engaged the students to see what kind of programs are needed. So my only ask of you as regents, should you be confirmed, is to hold them accountable because this is not just state dollars. This is the livelihood of the students that go there. And this is also the community that we all live in at stake to make sure that we have responsible citizens, well-educated citizens that are coming out of our colleges. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay, Senator Fabella.
sorry. Couple of things, for me, I mean, I'm pretty sure, if he was watching, how the proceedings went with, President Lasner, as you, taking on this position, and if you are confirmed, one of the things that I wanted to bring up is that David Lasner is both, president of the University of Hawaii, chancellor of the university campus, and president of the University Chief Procurement Office. Do you think the president of the university should be allowed to also serve as chancellor of Manoa campus? And is it reasonable to assume that servicing both roles could lead to conflict of interest?
I find it unusual. I've, especially in the, I think most schools as well as most companies have separation, especially on the chief procurement side. So, and then I know in the past we've had a separate standalone chancellor that reported to the president. So I think I need to learn why it is that way, and then we should really look at it if it's proper governance at the school level.
And going forward as being part of the university and having an oversight, I don't know if you've been watching the news lately, but I mean, pretty much everybody paying attention. Do you think that the oversight of you guys' role as Board of Regents, see right now, since I will give you an example, sorry, Chair, but when I first got here, yeah, I knew nothing. But then I really thought and convinced myself that the Board of Regents had strength and oversight over the university. But since I've been here, honestly, I will tell you the truth, that's not what I ever seen. I seen a president dictate on how much he's gonna give people raises, and the Board of Regents did nothing. When we asked them the question, they knew. But did they approve it? No. They knew after he approved the pay raise. And I don't want to go into the individuals, but they all got between 30 to 40% raise in some of the positions. That's to me a very alarming that the Board of Regents didn't raise a red flag on none of these promotions within a 2-year period or whatever, that they got this kind of humongous raise. And you know what his answer was to me? Because they was all great team players. If we continue to award great team players, the NFL cannot handle any more high-paying linemen because we won't pay them the same as the quarterback. And I told him that. And he said I misunderstood him. But with no oversight and no trust in the Board of Regents, I just want to know, what would you and what can you do if you was there? What would you have done differently when it came to these huge pay raises that they're all getting paid about $250,000 plus? What would you do differently if you become one of the Board of Regents members?
Yeah, I really don't know if there was anything that went behind the scenes between the president and the board before that, or what was in the materials. But how I've normally seen it is that you have a peer group, and I think UH is a little different because it's a fully integrated university, but you would have peer groups for the positions you were looking at. So you're essentially the competitors, and you would see if our people were being paid, in how they were being paid in comparison to the peer group. And then you would make your decision from that. But I really don't know what went on, if they got to see that in the binders or outside, but you need to have a good feeling when you do that, you've made the decision with enough knowledge to, especially when it comes down to compensation.
Sure, just a couple more. One more is, if you are confirmed and you become a Board of Regent member, would you stand firm as the regent to represent the best interests of not only the state but of the university? And this is, again, since I've been here, I only seen the free reign that President Lasner has on that campus. But being as a Board of Regent to this Board of Regent, can you assure me, because I'm still new, that would come to an end? Because he doesn't feel that there's any consequence to his actions of what he does and what he says and what he represents. And the Board of Regents is the people that we felt that would have that oversight and the trust that we have for the state and for the university's best interest. And the reason why I'm going to say this, and you see this in the news, okay? So we had a coach and an AD, right? Both on the same level. But the atmosphere of this whole situation plays out to the president. And I give you an example. Because if these complaints was coming and the president knew about it, he didn't step in. And the reason why I say that is because all three of them have the same mentality. The leadership of the university dictates what's happened below them. And because these things was happening, and we had assured and asked the Board of Regents to step in. It came into the coaching, the racism, the things that was being said by the coach. I mean, those are the things that dictate from not only the Board of Regents, but the president. But when he, on Zoom, didn't see that he had a problem, that we was cherry picking the people, that was very hurtful. And then when we asked the regent what they was going to do about it, they really wasn't just there to listen. These people had poured out their heart and soul and their reputation on Zoom, on TV, knowing what had happened to them on campus. And that's all the leader of the university had to say. And then when we asked, going forward, what the Board of Regents, I mean, I know you don't know all the detail, but being at the Board of Regents, like how we had the representation, what could you say, or what could you do, what you know, a little bit of knowledge that you know, what you would have done differently if Senator Kim had asked you, can you please go look into this matter, what's happening or whatever? And they didn't even schedule a meeting until she kept on insisting something be done. But as a board member, what would you have done differently after seeing this played out on TV and in the news?
Well, I had a chance to watch the 2 hours. So, first of all, going on to the first part of your question about,
yes, sir.
Going to the, well, I'm on the board, and I've been on quite a few boards, and it's okay to challenge management, give them constructive feedback. A little positive tension is always good for the good of the organization. And then when you do your governance, you put your personal feelings behind, and but it appears that it came to you guys. Right. Yeah. So that's an issue that has to go that far up. And then I think something as visible as Shepard going to the portal, and there was a trickle down after that. A little bit more active management by the regents to the president would have been appropriate.
So the last one, Chair. So again, when I got here, I always heard the university professors or people from the university say, how much more pay the mainland compared to Hawaii and all of this going forward. But then what I found out is that the mainland, the researchers are not tenured. Yeah, and the researchers bring in most of the money. Only in Hawaii, as far as I know, that is different. So again, we had a concern about establishing some guidelines for tenure processing requiring the University of Hawaii for academic tenure usually includes faculty who teaches, but the university also provide tenure for researchers. So the question is, if confirmed, as a member of the Board of Regents, are you willing to review policies of the university relating to tenure and tenure for faculty as recommended by the permitting in the group of the interaction group covering the university? So you know what group I'm talking about, that they had made that presentation saying about the tenure. I just have a concern, big concern, because every time we talk about that we cannot take care of our professors and we cannot pay this because they compare to the mainland. But when it comes to comparing how they get paid, they don't want to compare that. And when it was brought up, everybody was upset and uproar that we was trying to, how dare us try to take away the tenure, in which we wasn't taking away the people that was tenured. Now, it was anybody coming in after. Shouldn't we be transparent enough to if you want to be like the mainland and you want the mainland price, well, then go to the mainland, for one. Second, if you want to be transparent, then you got to do what the mainland do. They bring in most of their pay as a researcher, and they do the credit hours. Over here, we don't have them, hold them to accountable to the credit hours. Some of the researchers is not even in their class. You know what I mean? So this, if you can, if you are confirmed, can you please really look into this? Because it's a big concern, not only as senators and representatives in this building, our taxpayers. They're suffering in everything and every way you can think of this tenure and how we tenure our university professors or researchers here in Hawaii. So can you help us with that if you confirm? So can you just answer that question? Don't want to add, sorry, going off the subject a little bit about
Yes.
being a member of the region?
Yes, I'll look into it. And I really have learned a lot in the last few weeks visiting with the senators
Thank you.
about the tenure.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your time. Thank you, guys.
Okay, I have a number of questions, and as we talked about, being part of the regions is very important, and especially since we kept referring to the fact that the UH has autonomy, and as to my right have said that we don't have complete autonomy because you still rely on the state and the taxpayers for a good portion of the funding, and unless you can be independent of all state funds, I don't think that the university will ever be able to have full autonomy. And in that sense, we do have a concern. A number of these questions are coming because of what have taken place and the experience that the senators have had with the university. So, we're posing these questions to you folks because of that. So we understand that you are new, but we want to go ahead and make known so that when you get on the regions, hopefully there will be some kind of change. And in saying that, you say in your statement that I will represent the public interest. And when you say the public interest, how will you know what the public interest is? Where will you get that information as to what is the public's interest?
Well, the public interest in the mission and the vision is that it'll be affordable. It will will serve the staff, the students, the faculty, and then
But that's subjective, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's all subjective.
the
So,
public interest on hearing what the public interest is.
yeah, or, how do you know what's affordable? What's because we get feedback a lot. And I know you said that there should be better relationship with the legislature needs to be improved. And just for your information, I don't believe that the chair of the regents now or when he was chair back in 2014, ever reached out to any of the members. I don't ever recall getting a phone call from the chair of the Regents at all. And not asking why we introduce a certain measure, what are some of the concerns? And so when you say that, would you say then some of the bills and so forth that we introduce here might represent some of the public interest? Would you agree to that perhaps?
Well, I think, yes, when the bills are presented, they do represent the public interest. I think when you, from my own experience working at a publicly traded company, you know, you have your stakeholders, your board, and the senior management, and then you've got the larger voters, which are the Vanguard Fidelities. There's a lot of interaction between the senior management and their investor relation trips that go to Wall Street to make sure that the big stakeholders with the voting rights have, there's a lot of interaction, that they know the story of what our company is doing, and the large stakeholders can provide their feedback on what they're seeing in the market. And so essentially, there's more communication. And I think that's something that would work, because I think the public, they go to you more, the legislature. I don't know how much of the public goes to the Board of Regents and what they hear from the, but I think a better working relationship with the legislature between the senior management, the Board of Regents, and the legislature, them communicating and working together is needed. And you know, that's how we see it for the publicly traded companies, and it does work.
Okay. Well, that's all good and well. It's just that, you know, is it going to be implemented? So if in fact some of the measures that we do introduce represents the public interest, and that there should be better communication, wouldn't the regents then want to know why certain measures were introduced, and if certain measures had merit, then, and if there's a need of legislation, that the regents would take it up? Does that seem plausible, or seem something that could happen or should happen?
It's logical and it should happen.
Okay, but it doesn't. So every single measure we've introduced never got a call from the chair of the regents. Well, I did last chair, but as a whole, no call from the regents asking us why we introduced a measure, or what can we do to fix this, or how can the university work with us on this. It's absent. Do you think that's a policy that should continue? Or should you folks elect a chair that might be a little bit more, take a leadership role in working with the legislature, or perhaps appointing somebody from the regents that would, I mean.
Yeah, I think that's something that would have to be adopted by the regents and the chair as a spokesperson. And then also it would, senior management would need to be involved, because they, you know, they carry out a lot of that. And it would be good for them to know. I think, well, it definitely is something that is needed. Effective communication and engagement does work.
So that's something you will definitely talk about and discuss with the Board of Regents once you become a member, should you be confirmed. And is that a trait in someone who you might support as chair of the Regents, that they have that or are willing to engage with the legislature as well as with the public? Because the feedback I get, and I'll talk about more about this on the athletic side, but the people who came to us with athletics does not trust or feel comfortable going to the Regents. Because the people that they have concerns about in the athletic department, they know that they're gonna hear about it. And so they fear. Current staff members fear for their jobs. And so they don't go to the Regents. And they don't go to the president, so they end up coming to us. So that's hopefully something that will change on the Regents, that mentality to be, instead of being passive board member, being an active board member.
Yeah, but active and engaging, and I'm pretty sure that they're viewing this, the senior management and some other Regents, and they hear what you're saying too. So
you talked about accountability. And for me, the question is, what does that look like? What does that accountability look like? Because it's easy to say, we got to hold management accountable. And, do you also hold the chair of the Regents accountable? And what does that accountability look like?
I think accountability at the senior management is a little bit more well-defined. You could have quantitative metrics, enrollment, and operating efficiencies, and those type of metrics that you could measure their effectiveness. The board chair looks like it's elected by the Board of Regents for 1 year period, and then so I think if someone gets elected to the chair position, they should feel that they are willing to step into what is needed, and needed is would be a little bit more active on the governance side, as well as going up and knowing what the public is saying.
No, I agree with you, but I think what does it look like in the sense of when you're saying, you're going to base it on enrollment so what if the enrollments drop? So what if they don't do what they said they're going to do? What if you ask for a vision statement and it doesn't come? It takes 2 years to get a vision statement. What if the board chair doesn't engage with the legislature? What, as a board member, how do you hold them accountable? Do you just sit back and wait to the next election, or you ask for something to be put on the agenda and they don't want to put it on? What do you do? What's accountability look like? I'm just telling you things that I know goes on. And
yeah. Well, first of all, at the senior management level, I don't know what their compensation plan looks like, because it's normally you would have your base salary and then something tied to incentives based on metrics. I don't know if they're just paid a flat salary and that's it.
Flat salary.
Okay, so that and I'm not sure if that can be changed, but normally, normally the variable amount tied to key performance indexes will motivate people in the right way. On the chair side, it still comes back. I think it's the board members can recommend issues to the board. And there would need to be enough support for if the board chair doesn't well, you would need enough board members to vote something, to do something. And that takes a little bit more active participation. And that's where it's important to, as the board, to
Right.
the
And-
chair.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing here at the legislature. I mean, one person can't pass anything.
Yeah.
And so you got to get the support, but it doesn't stop a member from standing up and saying something on the floor, requesting in writing something to be placed on the agenda, or passing, introducing a resolution, even though it doesn't, I mean, you know, it then at least expresses that member's concern about what's going on, but it seems like the regions have for a long time felt that they all have to speak as one, and they all have to support the president. So,
I think you should say what you feel. Yeah, and if, you know, thinking of the mission and vision of the organization.
yeah, because it would be helpful if board members spoke up, and it's in the minutes, because I read the minute. I don't attend the meetings, but I do read the minutes to see whether or not issues are being vetted or they're just being rubber stamped and voted upon as they come up and questions aren't being asked. And if questions are being asked, whether those questions are being challenged and asked again in different ways to get, you know, the answers. Otherwise, if you don't follow up on some of these questions and you just ask the questions to ask it, it really doesn't do anything. Members, if anybody wants to jump in, I have a number of questions, so please feel free or to want to follow up. So yeah, I just hope that going forward, board members will feel more open to speaking out and, you know, or making a motion saying, I'd like this to be on the agenda next month, in our next agenda, because there are things that do not get on the agenda.
Let me interject
Yes, go
something.
ahead. Senator
Gabe,
Kidani.
so earlier when Senator Favela was speaking about the PIG, the Permitted Interaction Group, there was a group put together of, I can't remember how many members, and they made some suggestions, but the board never did agenda. Chair never put it on the agenda for the regions to discuss. So that's what's disheartening, is that this was, you know, in some ways related to some of the issues that we were having, but the PIG group did, you know, meet and talk to some of the senators and got some information and made some recommendations, but that was never put on the agenda for the full board to discuss and take action.
To be more specific, there are 4 board members on the PIG, and there were, I think, a total of 9. The rest are all chancellors and so forth, and 1 union representative, and it was unanimous except for the university union rep in favor of all of the recommendations, and it went to the board. It got tabled. The chair of that PIG, which was a former chair of the regents, and then came and asked for us to look at it because the regents wouldn't take up their own PIG. And we ended up introducing as a measure and then getting beat up, saying that, you know, we're trying to overstep the boundaries of the regents, who the regents have the control. But when no action is taken, what is left for the public to do but come to us, right? So in that case, doesn't that raise the red flag? Like, okay, why is the legislature doing this? Are they doing our job? Shouldn't we be responding to this? Shouldn't we be taking it up? Because none of us want to take it up. None of us want these controversial issues, but we do when it's brought up to us. I mean, that's part of why we're elected, right? And so part of being confirmed as a regent, I hope that you folks will take that position. And if not, then, you know, I tell people, why would you want to sit on the Board of Regents if you're not willing to do that? So going back to the hearing we had with the athletic department
Mhm.
that you watched, that I request that you watch. So what did you think when the chair of Ways and Means asked the president what was his vision? What did he see? What did he think was needed for a D to take a sports program to a successful competitive D1 program? And he said he wasn't prepared to answer that.
The, did he ask the president or was that the AD?
He asked the president, that was the first
Yeah.
question he asked the opening of the hearing, if you recall. He asked that
Yeah,
question.
yeah, and then it went, I think the AD is a little bit more, like, a lot more articulate on that part, what you need for at least the athletic program. Yeah. So I think in that one, first went to the president, and then the AD answered it. And I think,
Well, it
Yeah.
went to the president. It went to the president. He said he wasn't prepared because it wasn't on the agenda, one.
oh yeah,
And then two,
Yeah.
the chair started asking him more questions about, well, do
Yeah.
you want a winning program? Do you want this? And he started trying to answer that.
yeah,
And then he shuffled it over to the AD, who sat there, never jumped in at any given time. But shouldn't some kind of overall vision be top of mind for the leader of the University of Hawaii? And as a board member, would you bring that up as a concern? Because then I asked the question about the budget. Following that, I asked, what is the deficit of the athletic department? And again, he wasn't prepared to say. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, they knew it in advance we're taking it up. And if you look at the hearing notice, it does say budget, but they weren't prepared. So again, it's just troubling that. And I never got a call asking me to, what were we going to cover, give some insight, why are we hearing this measure? And neither did anybody on the committee get calls from the university. So there was no communication with us about why we were holding that hearing.
yeah, I would think it would be it's very appropriate if you get an agenda from, say, the legislature to make a call to make sure that you know what is going to be covered. I mean, when I go to a meeting, I want to be a little bit more proactive if I only see very few things. And we'll make a call to see what's going to be covered, and so I'm prepared. Okay.
Were you surprised when the president said, after all the people who testified, that they were somehow aggrieved by what happened with the coach, and that they had mental concerns about mental stability because of all the stuff that went on, that the president would say, "You cherry picked"? I mean, that was almost the first words out of his mouth.
What did he say though?
When after the end of all the testimony,
Yeah,
and I think we asked the president for his comment, and he was very upset because he felt that there were like 50 other testimonies, written testimonies in support. And he said, we cherry picked the people who came forward to testify.
yeah. I would think that, well, I don't know if were there a lot of testimony in support too.
Yeah, there were
Yeah.
testimony in support of the coach
Yeah.
and stuff, but we were there and listening to the people who were aggrieved, or it's like people who feel that they were sexually, and this is not
Yeah.
the university, but if you were running a company and you had people come to you and say they were sexually harassed or somehow
Yeah.
by management, would you go and solicit all the testimony of people who didn't get sexually harassed? Or would you only speak to the people who felt that they had a complaint?
Or you should investigate what happened, definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I guess it was just concerning that the comments didn't come out like, well, we'll certainly look into this. We're going to investigate it. It was like, well, you cherry picked.
Yeah.
So,
Can I follow up on that?
yes. Senator,
I guess it comes down to a lot of this discussion we're having with you is, at some point, the legislature gets involved because it did not appear that the Board of Regents or the university was going to be taking any action or was moving forward on something. Because I think the comment we got at some point during the hearing was the Board of Regents chair saying, well, the next Board of Regents meeting isn't scheduled until some time, so we can't take it up until then. So I guess the whole discussion we're having is what kind of regent are you going to be? If you see an issue, are you going to just be reacting to what the public or what the legislature does? Or if it's important to university, then is it important enough for you to take action within your authority as a member of the region?
Yes, I think if something like that does happen, it is appropriate to bring up if a special meeting should be held. And I have no idea what went on at that time, if a few of them thought that way, or or if they had enough, or to get something scheduled. But something that is that visible and very emotional for the public, it's appropriate to schedule a meeting if there is enough regents that feel the same way.
So are you saying that you'd be committed to doing that if a situation arose to that level? And I can't identify what that could be, but
I'm pretty proactive in anticipating next steps. So if there's something that visible, and knowing that it's probably going to go to the legislature, it would be good if you do step in and do something.
okay, thank you.
You talked about right sizing in your comments to us, or your statement to us, that all parties need to work together to find common ground in regard to funding, right sizing, program offerings, and so forth. So do you think that the University of Hawaii needs to be right sized as far as enrollment is concerned?
I don't have the background now, but it still needs to come where you look at peer colleges and universities, and that would be the first thing to see if we're in line. And I know that UH is hard to compare to most because it's fully integrated with 10 different campuses. So I would think that for the community colleges, there might be one peer group. For a four-year university with similar research and those like that, there's a peer group for that. UH-Hilo is, I would think, would have a different peer group, and then you can figure out, and then West Oahu too. But you would have to look at it, and you can pretty much figure out if something is in line or not.
As Senator Favela brought up about comparing university with our peers, and he's correct that whenever it's convenient and whenever it's advantageous, we will always see comparisons with the peers on the mainland. But when it's not what they want, then we won't see it. So it's really inconsistent. And, and he pointed to the fact about researchers, that we're the only university in the whole United States that tenure researchers, and the only one that do not require researchers bring in 60 to 80% of their salaries, their paid general funds. So, that's a really big example of how they don't compare ourselves to peers. But in the case of the enrollment, how big should our university be? And because it got to a point at the high when the university had about, I don't know, maybe 20,000 at Manoa, and they kept growing. And then enrollment dropped down to 14 at one point, low. And then they employed a number of measures, including the EAB contract, which cost us $2.7 million to increase enrollment. And it wasn't successful. We spent all that money. But at what point? Because what we see is that the enrollment went down, but the expenditures kept going up. So we saw this V shape, and we had all these buildings and all this bricks and mortar and enrollment. So, they kept trying to get the enrollment back up, but is at some point to say, well, maybe this is the right size. And because it can't be all things to everybody, right? We can't have every program. Like at some point we were having Russian and there were 2 students in the Russian program. And, you'd have these programs and these silos at the university. You can't get rid of them because they're tenured. Professors are tenured. And so you have all of these issues going on. And yet we're not really right-sizing the university and just trying to chase after what it used to be, or I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but as a border region, shouldn't that be something that you folks are looking at?
Just to be big it shouldn't just be the goal. We were at 20,000, or I don't know. We think that everything has to make sense. So the funding, what amount comes through appropriation, what you charge the students, and then you have to right size your operating expenses to it. And I don't know what happened when the enrollment went down. I don't know if there was a tuition increase and if that caused it, or it might be where you have less students and a little higher tuition and operating expenses reduce, and it's a better it might just be better for overall management. That's you have to take a look at that at every campus, and I would think that is prepared at the senior management level, presented to the board when it comes up to the, I understand, there's a budget committee and there's a personnel committee, and I would think that type of information goes up to those committees, and those committees should really look at those. And then it gets presented.
Well, I think this happened when across the country, they were seeing across the board where institutions of higher education that enrollments was dropping across the board. And so part of it, I think, is just the fact that, I'm not sure the population or less people were going to coming here, but across the mainland as well, they were seeing a drop in tuition. But it's like, do we build a 100,000 seat stadium where we might have 1 or 2 games that will fill it and then try to keep filling it? Or do we build a stadium for 50,000, or do we build one for 30,000? And we'll always fill, or almost always try to fill the 30,000. I mean, so what are we chasing? And can we afford to maintain the buildings for that many, to maintain the infrastructure? You know what I'm saying? So there needs to be a right size. So a couple of years ago, the regents decided they're not going to increase the footprint. That UH was large enough. They're not going to increase the footprint. They passed a resolution, a board resolution. And then Atherton came up for sale and the foundation bought it, and then UH went and go ahead and leased it. And they just increased their footprint, and they violated their own resolution. And what they did was they asked the general counsel, their attorneys, to opine whether or not they violated the resolution. Does that make any sense? They're the body that passed it, and they went to their attorneys and asked I don't make this up now, it's true, and asked them whether or not they violated, and the attorney said no. And here's a good example, and that project had all kinds of problems, and they kept going forward, and today it's being built, and it may end up being a white elephant at some point. But they're moving forward on it against their own policy. So, that's really mind-boggling for us, that one, they finally make a decision and then they don't follow their own decision at the first crack of something.
That's,
Okay. Let me ask you one more thing, unless anybody else want to jump in. So Region Policy number 9214 reads, as instruction is the university's highest priority, teaching remains the most important duty of its faculty. Okay, that's the policy. This policy sets standards for the assignment of instructional component of faculty responsibilities. Standard teaching assignments for a full-time instructional faculty is 24 semester credit hours per academic year at Manoa, Hilo, and West Oahu. 27 semester credit hours academic year at the community colleges. So what does that mean to you? What does this policy mean?
oh, that pretty much says how many hours they should be teaching. But that's a semester, yeah.
A year.
Yeah, a year.
Semester credit per year.
Yeah.
Okay. However, when I asked the question, how many of the faculty teach 24 credit hours at Manoa? The answer was 0. Okay. And when I asked the question, how many teach 21? The answer was pretty much 0. Okay. Because there's an undocumented rule of thumb that says 3 credit hours, faculty get a 3 credit hour reduction for service, meaning it gets to 21. Then they get another 3 credit hours reduction for research. So that's 6. So that brings us to 18. Okay? However, it says additional reduction awarded by discretion of the department chair and varies by department. Anything from clinical, advising, tutoring, non-research objectives, chairs have the authority to grant reductions for other teaching activities that is not listed in their teaching workload credit equivalency tables. So as a result, the average for a Manoa faculty is 8 to 12 credit hours. When the policy says instruction at the university's highest priority, teaching remains the most important duty. So if teaching is the most important duty, how is it that all of these reductions is greater than the amount of courses that are being instructed and taught?
Yeah, what you said, it was an unwritten rule?
Undocumented rule of thumb,
Oh, okay,
because it's not in any policy that
Yeah.
I could find.
yeah. No, I would
So
think,
basically,
you
we
know,
have to hire twice the number of professors to
Yeah.
teach because they're only teaching 12 credits or less. That's the cost we have, so the university.
So should there be a maximum or a maximum amount of reductions any one faculty should get?
yeah, I would think that,
Because it's left to
Yeah.
the discretion of the chair. And shouldn't the reductions be granted is given by the dean of the school and not the chair, because the chairs are peers that rotate. They come from the faculty versus the dean is more like management, right?
yeah, I kind of, hard to get past the undocumented. You know, I come from a financial institution that is, you know, we got our regulators looking at us. We got all these policies and procedures, and we have internal audit coming in, and we have the outside CPA and the regulators looking at us. So we can't get undocumented. So there must be some, hopefully.
I
there's
see
something.
Lori smiling through her mask because she used to be at the university, so I'm sure she'll opine on this when we get to her. But yeah, that's what goes on. So my question is, and I know you're not there, but if these things concern you, then shouldn't the board be taking it up?
Yeah, it should be.
And shouldn't a policy be amended or fixed? Because there's
Something
a,
should be documented.
well, there's another policy that probably Senator Kidani would like to talk about, and that's on specialist positions. Because according to the board policy, again, that the policy number is 9.202, and it names all the type of positions classifications at the different campuses, and it does not name specialists for Hilo and West Oahu. And yet, guess what? The chancellors at Hilo and at West Oahu hire specialists. And nothing happens. I mean, it says here that the president, as the chief executive officer, needs to ensure that board policies are implemented and adhered throughout the organization. Yet, that's not being followed. It's not being adhered to or implemented. Does that concern you that once you get on the board, you have a policy that's not being implemented or adhered to?
Yeah, that would concern me. And
What would you do?
well, I'm pretty sure, like I mentioned, they're watching, and also Regents, and
They watch all the time.
Yeah.
Nothing happens.
boy, this is not the first time.
No, these are measures that we brought up time and time again. We've
Yeah.
introduced bills on these. And you know what? They went to the House to get it killed.
Yeah, so on our end, the only thing we can do is during budget time, cut those positions and cut the funding for it.
Mhm.
But like she says, it changes when it gets to the House, and then it continues the next year. It's, you know, they're playing hide and seek.
It should be looked into.
Okay, well, it's gotta start with you guys, the new
Yeah.
board members. Okay, members, any other, Senator Ravella, go ahead.
Since Senator Kim brought up the educational aspect of the 24 credit hours, I'm pretty sure he's the vice president of the university. My concern was that when I first got here, I was really harping on the educational part. And I was corrected because every time I would say something in the meeting, and later on, President Lazar and I guess the vice president would want to meet in my office and huddle up. I don't huddle up. I don't know what for. But I asked the question about this educational aspect, because that's what we said the kids there for education. Vice President told me it's not the university's priority, not education, it's research. But we don't advertise that. And we tell our kids, be all you can be at a research college. We do not. I ask them to go and be all you can be in education. But if they have the mindset of the vice president on this whole situation, so now you can understand where we're going with this. If they mentality thinking that, okay, education is secondary, that's the reason why we have no warm bodies on campus. We had a Russian tenured that was tenured there for I don't know how much years teaching Russian. The only thing I rushed to is when I gotta go to the restaurant. But I never took Russian when I went to university, and I never went to university. But how we have this kind of oversight that we cannot. And then when you try to have a decent conversation, that's their attitude, that they're not an educational institute. But then why are they not advertising that to our kids and the parents? They're not hearing that. See, the university is higher learning. It's an educational institute. But then when the vice president and the president have that kind of mentality. So that's the reason why it's a disconnect. 24 credit hours. I heard that community colleges have to meet every single quota. They get penalized, but not at the university. So that's the thing that as going in with these fresh ideas or fresh eyes, we need to hold these guys accountable of their actions, because if they're telling me that, imagine when somebody a parent come up to you and tell them about my education for my kid and tell them, oh, our priority is research, not the kid's education. And they should put that on top of their brochures and their little nice commercials. And we're not the institution of education, we're here research. Your kid's education is secondary to the research. See how fast the enrollment drop. Cannot be lying to the public and then the public go there and see these kinds of happening. We have no moving forward of the West Oahu campus being the highest and the most demand in my community, not having these things. But they're not gonna duplicate University of Manoa and over here. So our kids gotta go all the way to town, a couple of classes, and take the rest of the classes at West Oahu, which is impossible for the kids that live in new areas. So that's the reason why I brought that up, because it really hit my head when he told me this when I first got here, and I was arguing the fact about education being a priority at the university. And that was his comeback to me, that we are not an educational institute, we are a research institute. And it blew me away. If a vice president of the university can have that attitude, imagine what else mentality that having over there, disconnected, coming to education on a higher learning of our kids. I just give one quick question. I'm not going to go too much into it already, but you know what's happening with the Warrior football. So my question to you, do you believe that the Board of Regents should have the authority of terminating the athletic director and the head coach for cause? Would you insist that the Board of Regents follow the policy and approve all coaching contracts and sales salaries to state the old policy and current of the board policy, saying that the board requires approval of original terms of the head coach contract listing for more than 5 years? Contract amendment, more than 5 years salary, hiring with the coach salary of $800,000, but the Board of Regents could not provide documents regarding that approval for Graham's contract. So you think, let me finish, that the oversight could have cost the state millions of dollars if Graham didn't decide to resign. So now, these are the things that, see, to me, when it comes to taxpayers' money, this is the reason why I love my colleagues here. Because since I've been here, all they worry about is the taxpayers' money. When it comes to the university and running up the university, the Board of Regents, the president, we get deep pockets. That's okay if we're going to go $7 million over cost at Ching Stadium because I'm the procurement chair. What's the best interest of the school, right? And who gets to make the decision? The chancellor and the president and the procurement chair. Or what? Nobody else had the site. Procurement was way off the scope, saying like this. They couldn't even find a contract. Yes. Is this the way of the policy of the Board of Regents going forward? I hope not. So hopefully when you guys get in there, we can have some kind of clarity on how we can take care and making sure that our taxpayers and the kids get educated on the taxpayers' money. Do you feel, what do you think about this policy of having the Board of Regents having the oversight in hiring and firing the AD and the coach as I see?
Well, if the policy says that the regents need to approve it, they should approve it. And but it goes up from the recommendation of the AD and the president, and then to the regents. I'm surprised that they couldn't find a copy. Is that it?
Contract for the coach's salary for $800,000.
Yeah.
Couldn't find that approved copy.
That should be documented if
Yeah,
that's part of the policy.
I think right now, the board has a policy where they only review contracts that is over 500,000. And we introduced a measure that took it down to 200,000. Because there's only one coach that gets paid over 500,000, and that was the football coach.
Yeah.
And in the case of Rolovich, she was being paid 400 plus bonuses, and because it didn't hit the 500, I guess the board didn't see it. So that was the thing. And the other thing is that the firing the coach and the AD for cause is that if all of the problems at the athletic department is deemed to be to hold the athletic director accountable, then the only person that can fire him now is the president. And if the president refuses, and I'm saying this is just in a hypothetical, refuses, then the only alternative the board would have is to fire the president. So if you wanted the AD fired, you'd have to fire the president if they would do it. And that's kind of drastic, right? If in case you felt that. Yeah. But so, this just gave another layer or more oversight to the Board of Regents. But let me just tell you that the Board of Regents has been granted full legal power and authority to manage and control the affairs of the university. So that being in the law, you guys can create any policy. If you folks wanted to hire and fire the AD, I think they could, couldn't they? Joe, since you're the attorney. But like the fact that you folks have that kind of autonomy, you could have a policy if you felt it necessary. But the attitude that we get from the regents is like, well, we can only hire and fire the president. The president, handles all the day-to-day operations of the university, but that doesn't mean that you folks don't have oversight and that you don't exercise the oversight, just like us. Just because the university has some autonomy, we still have oversight over what's the best interest of the state. And we don't hesitate to exercise that oversight and hope that the regents won't hesitate.
What it comes down to, if you look, the regents in this case, when we talk about the football coach, could have made a decision and could have voted to have the president remove the AD or have the president command the athletic director to remove the football coach. But that wasn't even, as far as I know, discussed or voted upon. So they do have that complete authority, but I never see them act that that way. They just, I think, are too laid back and indecisive, and they let the president run the university the way he does. But obviously, we don't agree with those decisions. So I think what we're getting at is that we want to see regents that are going to be more interactive and aware of what's going on for the public good. Because this all comes down to the money that we spend on the university that costs our students, money to go to the university, and the taxpayers pay for it.
Yeah, and we don't have to agree with you, with the board, but we want to see that you're discussing it. We want to see that it's on the agenda. And whatever your folks' decision at the end of the day is your decision, but when it doesn't even get placed on the agenda or it doesn't get discussed, then it concerns us, right? It doesn't take it to a vote. Even if the vote fails, at least, it was brought up. Okay, now we know for the record. But
Similar with the Board of the reason why I'm concerned with the Board of Regents when it came to Coach Todd Graham is because he already had problems from another university because of his friendship with the AD. And this is the thing about anything within government. Yeah, we have this kind of stuff. So that's the reason why the Board of Regents, I'm not sure if it was on the agenda. I don't know how it would have got on the agenda, but hiring the coach should have been a discussion with the Board of Regents before he had hired him, even though the president had oversight. I'll tell you why. Because if you guys seen that, you guys wouldn't have approved. Because the salary, isn't that salary is approved by the Board of Regents?
Only if it's.
When it comes to the coaches one?
Only if it's over 500 and they usually just take the
Yeah,
recommendation.
so the 800,000 that Graham was gonna get, that should have been something that the Board of Regents should have took up and looked into him. That would have avoided the trauma that would have caused to the football team.
No, they would have approved it.
Oh,
It wasn't going to.
okay,
Not
oh,
this one.
okay, that's right.
But, you know, at the end of the day, the president gave the latitude to the AD to hire on his own. And he rushed it. Because he felt that we needed to get a football coach. And so he made that call, even though people warned him against this coach. So at the end of 2 years, when everything blew up, was anybody held accountable? Do you know of anybody being held accountable for this bad choice or for the mental health of our student athletes and all of the players that left the portal? You know of any action that was taken, any
No, I'm not.
reprimand? Because there was none. There was none. So then what does that say to the public and to the people at the university, that there's no accountability?
Well, I would think that they're aware of it and they're working on it. And but the accountability side, I think a lot of it fell initially on Coach Graham, and then it's a good thing he quit. But
So were you able to see the press conference that was held by Meisenthal? The
I
day
didn't
that,
see that one.
the day that Jimmy Chang
I
got.
just saw what was on the news.
Okay. Yeah, well, he held this press conference that was very character assassination for Gene Jones and some other very offending comments that was made. And he was not held accountable. As far as I know, he's still at the university, and it was kind of bad. So, but you know, and that's just, the snowball kept growing in this situation with how the handling of the coach was hired was very troubling. And let me ask you this. Will you make it a point, if you're confirmed, to visit all of the UH campuses, at least on Oahu, regularly, so you can get a sense of what's happening on the campuses and what might be needed?
Yes, I looked at their schedule and the board meetings are held at different campuses on Oahu, and then I think one goes to UH-ELO.
Yeah, but once you get to the meeting, you're stuck in the meeting all
Yeah.
day. You don't get to go to the
Yeah.
campus. You don't get to go unannounced and talk to the students or
Yeah.
people to find out what's going on. A few of us went to West Oahu for a visit
Yeah.
about, I don't know, 3 weeks ago. is it? And we were surprised that it was like a ghost town. Even though the university said that everybody was back on campus, there was hardly anybody there. The chancellor wasn't there. The brand new life sciences building had maybe one classroom being used. There was nobody there. A brand new campus, the fastest growing population on the island is West Oahu. And this was supposed to be the jewel of West Oahu. And it was just absent. It was just terrible.
Yeah, that's a nice campus.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so.
But I would definitely would want to learn more about each campus,
Right. and do-
including
So would you have the time to do like an unannounced visit and just go over and see things for yourself? What's going on?
not too sure unannounced, but I would
Well,
rather
as a visitor.
I'd rather
just-
coordinate it.
No, but
Yeah.
just as a
Yeah.
visitor.
Campus.
Yeah. Anybody's open to the public,
Yeah.
so you could walk on.
Yeah,
You
just
know.
walk around. and see
Yeah.
what's going on.
So Ching Field, my understanding is, I think there was a board arranged for a visit of Ching Field and only 2 board members showed up. Only 2 board members showed up.
Yeah.
And this is the place where somebody died during the construction. The procurement, there were some concerns about the violation of the procurement code.
I would like to learn as much as I can. about
Yeah, I mean, the
campuses.
board members
Yeah.
should be aware, right? And
Yeah.
of the campus and what's going on.
I feel a little bit more comfortable if it was coordinated than just walking on.
Yeah, that's fine. But I mean, sometimes, you know, you need to step into when they don't expect you to see what's really going on.
Hopefully they don't arrest me. It's like,
Okay, I think I covered most of my questions. So let me just ask you this overall. So listening to everything was said today and what you know, do you think that enough oversight is being exercised by the Board of Regents?
I think if so many issues come up to the legislature, there could be more oversight.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate
It's
that.
still the public going to the school and the board is more appropriate than.
Okay, note that all of this is being videoed. So in a year or two, I may send you a clip of the video reminding you what you said.
Just so,
I'm
just
sure
so,
you will.
just a follow-up on the visitation. I would really recommend when you have time to really go visit Ching Stadium and see if we got our money's worth. I will tell you right now, come with somebody who have any kind of construction background and see how much safety violations you're gonna see over there. They say that's not. Nothing that's temporary should ever be permanent, which is what they did. They used a temporary bleachers and they drilled it in the ground, made it permanent with cables and scaffold jacks. Yeah, you should really go look at that and see if we got our $7 million worth of that building and somebody passing away on that project. It's to this day, I get nightmares. My two colleagues was here when I was talking to them at Ching Stadium, and they insist that I go back and show them these things. So the contractor told me that they had a punch list. I went over there, literally kicked one of the jacks down. They said, yeah, we're gonna go back, we're gonna fix all of that because we're still doing our punch list. So I went back over there and the tensions on the cable is not tight enough. And the same area that I went, the jack is still loose. So this is something that I'm telling right now, that we need somebody to go and check it out, especially somebody from the Board of Regents, because we didn't, and I don't think that stadium is safe. Seriously.
Well, they're asking for 12 million more to build the rest of
Yeah.
Jim Field. So.
Yeah. Give it to the kind Senator Mordecai for us. Yeah.
Okay, members, any other questions for Mr. Lee? Not, thank you very much. Appreciate your candid answers and
Thank you for your willingness to
Thank
serve.
Thank you.
okay. We always keep the best for last. We are on our last item of the agenda, GM 806. Submitting for consideration and confirmation, Board of Regents and University of Hawaii, nominee Lori Tochiki for a term to expire 6/30/2027. And I don't know if they're still here, but we had people willing to testify on Zoom. The HMS Director testifying for Department of Human Services of the state of Hawaii. Are you here? Don't have a name. Hi. I do show Karen Worthington next, individual and support. So Karen, since you're there, so why don't you go ahead with your testimony?
Thank you, Senator Kim, Senator Kidani, and committee members. Thank you for this opportunity to provide testimony in support of the nomination of Lori Tochiki to serve on the Board of Regents. My name is Karen Worthington, and I'm a lawyer and a consultant who works primarily in the areas of child abuse and neglect. And I serve on as the chair of the board of Epic Ohana, which is the statewide organization that Lori leads. And I fully support Lori Tochiki's nomination and believe there is no one else as qualified for this position as Lori is. I want to briefly supplement my written testimony by trying to convey what an extraordinary, wise, and compassionate servant leader Lori is, as exemplified by her stewardship of Epic Ohana during the pandemic. So when the world turns upside down overnight, how do you lead? Lori led with compassion and flexibility. In looking back over the last 2+ years, I believe that every decision that Lori and her team made is the best decision that could have been made given the information available at the time. She was thoughtful, principled, analytic, open, collaborative, creative, and strategic. And she was tough and firm when needed. The pandemic highlighted Lori's ability to respond to a crisis in the moment, while also simultaneously planning for multiple future scenarios, communicating clearly about how and why decisions were being made, and understanding the impact of potential decisions on everyone involved with the organization, including the families and children EPIC serves and the community partners they support. As a result, EPIC Ohana is in a stronger position now than when the pandemic began. These are the skills and talents that our state needs, and I'm grateful that Lori is willing to share her gifts with the university system, and I hope that you confirm her nomination. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. Do we have the Human Services Director here? Not here. Okay. We have Michael Dahilik testifying for the County of Kauai, Managing Director. Are you here, Michael? Probably we're waiting so long. Lisa Jacobs testifying for EPIC Ohana, also in support. And we have got to be about 25 individuals also in support of the nominee. And so with that, Lori, I'm going to ask you if you would like to give some opening remarks.
Thank you.
Provided you still want to serve after you heard everything. you said.
I was very grateful that Gabe went first. So thank you. But Senator Kim, Senator Kidani, members of the committee, thank you so much for this opportunity. And I am I'm honored and a little trepidated, I think, listening and observing. But what I want you to know is that I care very deeply about this university. I have a personal commitment to it. I have a professional commitment to it. And I really do hope that the skills and the knowledge and some of the experiences that I've had can help me to build stronger bridges and better accountability at the university. I think I bring a perspective that's maybe a little bit unique from the community as a first generation person, you know, that didn't have the social capital to understand the university system, but then now as a former administrator and as a student, I am very proud of my degrees from the University of Hawaii, and I received a very fine education, and that's what I want for all of the students in Hawaii, for all of us. I also believe that the university needs to be intricately connected to the community. It's not, you know, I think one of the problems with that word autonomy, and Senator Keith Agaran and I had a conversation about autonomy this morning, and I was thinking about, you know, autonomy means maybe that ivory tower, right? That we don't want. And yes, we want people who are experts in education to make decisions about education. We don't want, we need to honor that kind of expertise. We need people who are researchers to understand what to pursue about research, but it has to be connected to the community. So really, I think what we want is partnership. And that partnership needs to be built on trust, relationship, communication. And I hope that I have the ability and skills to be able to help with that. Thank you.
I think you said,
And again, I'm really glad Gabe went first.
I think you said that very well, because that's true. It seems like every time we talk about autonomy, it's like, how dare you tell us what to do? We have autonomy, you know? And so it's like, you know, leave us alone and because we have autonomy, but it's not, like you said, they are, should be integrated with the community. With that, members,
I
questions?
just
Senator
wanted to
Fidel.
double check. So you are governor's message for the Board of Regents.
Yes.
Okay, I
yes.
thought you was gonna replace our president.
Chips.
I'll vote for you.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Questions? Senator Kidani.
It's more comments than questions. Laurie, I had a great interview with you and I'm very happy that, you know, you took up the challenge and after sitting here for probably an hour and a half or an hour, 45 minutes listening to us, throw questions at Gabe, you get the gist. Basically, I just want to hear you say that you will do your due diligence and not sit quietly by and let the issues pass by. Like I think this current board does. I just think the leadership of the board has to be challenged to stand up and make a difference.
And
That's all I'm asking.
I do make that commitment to you. And I think my commitment is to ask the questions and to kind of look and roll up my sleeves, you know, to gather the facts and to communicate it. You know, one of the things that I think is important is to talk things over. And when we don't give that kind of respect and open communication, that's when distrust even grows even more. The other part of it, I think, about accountability is accepting when you've made a mistake, you know, and not making it over and over again. Right? So I hope to be able to help with that.
Thank you. Appreciate you very much, Laurie. Thank you.
I think one of the goals that I hear spoken behind the scenes is that they don't want to talk about it because they hope it goes away.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they didn't want to put the coach thing on the agenda because they kind of just wanted it to go away. They don't want to bring it to light. So in that sense, as a board member, what would you do if the chair says, no, we don't want to bring it up. We just want to let the administration deal with it.
And one of the problems, right, is that when you don't address something like a sore, right, it just festers.
Right.
And I saw that, you know, I also watched the YouTube video of the hearing. And I was thinking, first of all, as a mother, when I perceive that my son has been hurt,
Right.
I'm a mama tiger. And,
Right.
and you don't let mama tigers not get their word. I mean, you know, that's just not.
We're mama tigers.
I'm a mama tiger too. And oh my goodness, you've got to, but what I was wondering about was, and I think the regions need to look into this, what is the structure for when there's a problem? Who do they go to? Do we have people in place where individual students or parents who have a problem know that they can go and get heard and respected and listened to, and maybe somebody who can be creative and problem solve before, goodness, mothers shouldn't have to call their legislators to get help for their son, right? Mm-hmm. So I think there might be some ways that the regions could look at those structures. And that's something that, you know, in the work that I do in child welfare, we're in the middle of really angry people, and we bring people together, even though they don't want to be together, every single day, and just air it, just open the door, you know, and let the light in and talk about it, even if it's sore, you know.
But, you know, the structure may be there to some degree, whereas the parents, the students went to their trainer or whoever it was, and then went to the AD and then came to us and said, nothing is being done. And of course, they said it was being done. They just didn't advertise it or they just didn't make it known. But of course, nobody contacted us to tell us they were working on it. And it festered because it started back in November. Everything went viral on YouTube and Facebook in December. By the time we got it was January. So they had all that time that things were going on and kids were leaving the school when it finally came to us and said, should we have a hearing on this? So it took a while for it to reach us. By then, it was boiling and nothing was being done. And so, the parents, and so if in fact the athletic director knew about it and did nothing, then what do you do at that point? I mean, how do you hold them accountable? Right? Somebody's got to be held accountable and nobody was held accountable. So it's back to business as usual.
And, Senator Kim, I think the other thing that's underneath that is it looks like there's a culture of that kind of, maybe it is just if you don't adjust it, it'll go away. But that is something, and shifting a culture, shifting that kind of mindset of how we respect the needs of the students and also, curriculum, many other things. Shifting that culture is really hard, but it is one of the tasks, I think, of the regions to talk about and set the values, the mission, the vision, and to then watch and see how that gets implemented throughout the organization, and with feedback and checks. So I think that there is a role. I don't think it is the role of the Board of Regents to be making every hiring and firing decision throughout the university. That would be, I doubt that the regents could do that well because of,
I think we agree with that. I think the fact that coaches tend to be a lot more involved in the student athlete, sometimes act as a defunct parent where the parents might not be or they don't have a parent. Many times you'll hear people talk about how their coaches, and for my son, his volleyball coach put a lot of passion in him and stuff. So they serve a different role than a normal faculty, a normal teacher would do. And so in that case, this whole mental issue, mental health issue comes about when that relationship gets to a point where it becomes abusive instead of disciplinary. And there's a fine line and you affect people's mental health. That's a concern, but it's not just the student athlete. I hear from staff people within the department, and there are whistleblower policies at the university, but they don't trust it. They're afraid. They're afraid for their jobs, and so they come to me under anonymity, and they're fearful. And so I don't know how to address that because I feel for these people and they can't get any kind of resolve or action. And it's not just football. So there is a problem. And that's why I said, sometimes you have to go unannounced. Sometimes you have to go in and see what's going on because there are serious issues being raised.
And again, I think that there is a role for the regions to adjust the culture and also the policies, right, that address those things. Sometimes it's also about listening and respecting each individual. There are always two sides of the story, and sometimes one disgruntled person may not actually be representing a systemic issue, but you still have to listen, and I think that's an important role. And I do, again, I have the benefit of coming after Gabe, but I'm actually anxious to visit every campus and see what's up. I like going to libraries and bookstores, so I might feel comfortable there. I agree with Gabe, though. I don't want to like wander around the classrooms all by myself, but yeah, I actually do really want to hear from the students.
Yeah, just know that when I get complaints or I get people call me, and I just don't do it on one. When I get a numerous, then it piques my interest, and then I look further into it because, like you said, there are two sides, and and there's always a disgruntled person or a couple, and so you have to, take that into consideration. But when it's overwhelming or it's serious enough, then you have to give it some credence. And then there's, got to be something where there's smoke, there's fire oftentimes, right? And so you want to nip it in the bud and not let it get to a point where it becomes a fire, right? So.
And to talk about things openly, I think helps. I want to share that in my little nonprofit, which is not of the scale of the university, which is massive. But when you go to our website and you look for grievances, it's my direct phone number. And that's because I really want the ability to talk with somebody who's upset directly first, and then, address whatever's going on. Sometimes the person, some of our families, and there are thousands of families, right, that we're working with every year. But some of our family members have mental health issues, some of them have substance use disorder. Sometimes the grievances are not actually substantive, but that person still deserves to be heard in a respectful manner. So that is something that I think just helps.
Sure. When I looked at your resume, so on paper, you spent so much of your life at the university. So yet I get the sense from talking to you this morning that you don't see yourself as a creature of the university, of the institution, but more, it seems like you've been more connected with the students and those that may not be who you expect to be at the university. So how do you translate that to your role on the Board of Regents if you're confirmed?
And I thank you, because I really do want to have the voice on the Board of Regents that has the lens of the students and the community, those people who are not ordinarily a part of that system. And I spent 20 years working in different roles, but I never had a job that was tenure track. It was either soft money or as an administrator. That administrative position wasn't a tenured position. So I was in and not, if there's a fraternity of sorts of university life, and maybe that's a part of being also first generation to go to college, and coming from, my family came from Guinea. I grew up in Waipahu. There's something about the university and the sort of the culture of the university that I've always felt a little bit like I'm a stranger to it, and I'm not. And I certainly feel embraced. And I've loved being at the university. But there's always that part that's like, excuse me, ma'am, you don't belong here. Maybe we should leave. There's a part of that when you come from a place like Waipahu, right? It just is. But I do love the students. I love, and they give me hope, and so those years when I was at the law school, and some of the people that wrote letters for me, they are amazing, and they are going to change the world. And by having a university that models and addresses their needs, and provides them with that good education, provides them with research opportunities, right? To discover cures for things and discover ways to heal injustices. We that's what we're supposed to be doing. And I love watching the students. I still do. I still, I feel so proud, when I see one of my former students just doing some really good stuff.
Well, so I was sort of glad that I know that you're taking the seat that Justice Sokoba has. And, being someone that grew up admiring Judge Sokoba, then intermediate Judge Sokoba, and then Justice Sokoba, I've always been struck by how quiet he acts in a lot of ways. But I know the passion that he has for a lot of other things. So I see a lot of that in you. And so I think it's kind of fitting that the governor picked you to finish the term that he couldn't finish because I think he's term limited, but a number of years he spent on the Board of Regents. But I'm very glad that you were willing to serve.
Thank you.
Can you, Lori, being a former administrator and, be objective and not given to peer pressure that you might experience being on the board?
I'm sorry. I'm not sure I understood the question. Do I believe that I can be objective?
Objective, because sometimes being a former administrator and having former peers, and, you may feel a pressure to support or not support something. You feel you can be objective?
I think that I have a pretty good skill set for trying to find out the data and understand first before making decisions or having opinions. So I think I have that kind of way of going about things. I think in terms of objectivity, because it's objective but not neutral, and I think that I have the strength of bringing in that lens of the student, and especially those students that are less represented, and those families, the families that I work with. I think bringing that lens can still be objective, but it does have a perspective to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get it. Do you think deans should be the one to grant, based on the conversation we had with Gabe, that deans should be the one to grant the reductions and not fellow faculty, like in the department chairs, when it comes to reductions in teaching credits?
The management structure with the deans and then the chairs, and then because I appreciated Gabe's analysis, which is how you go about when you've got an HR kind of situation, right? Like salaries, like promotions. You look at clusters of people, you look across so that you have some establishment of fairness. And our schools, and our departments have some autonomy, which is good, but you still need that sort of sense of fairness of the divisions. I think one of the roles of the regents in the personnel committee is also just to look at how are we making those decisions? What's the criteria? And are we being rigorous about it? I think that's one of the things that's really important is, when you've got the reviews, when you've got data coming in about productivity, are we structuring that in a way that's fair, that's reliable, and that has some sense of equity? One of the problems I think when the decisions are made too close, without a system that has good data around it, is that we've got loyalties and friendships that are understandable. You need a good cohesive team. But then when you've got personnel issues or pay raises or other things on top of that big, that cohesive team, that's really hard to navigate. And so it makes sense to have things that are a little bit more removed from the everyday friendships and relationships that you need to build to work together.
Right, so that's why the system of a department chair making those granting those requests or making those decisions just lend to this whole thing about fairness, because the whole issue of relationships and friendships, and when it rotates, now you're going to be asking, it doesn't lend to that kind of fairness. So if that's the case, then shouldn't we be striving to find a way, and it probably, without disrupting the whole system, that it might belong more with the deans than it does with department chairs. And that's a cultural change, because it's been going on for so long that, you know, there's going to be some push against it, or a lot of push against it. But, you know, how do you do that and keep the morale? Because I hear from people who, you know, perhaps the chair doesn't like a person or favor somebody else or have a relative or a spouse. I mean, you hear all of those stories, and it's just the morale issue comes into play. And, you know, same thing with tenure, because it is the department chairs that also review for tenure, which has been part of the PIG recommendation that it be moved from the chairs, which again received some pushback. So,
And Senator Kim, I see and respect the role the regents in setting those kinds of policies and structures. It's really complicated also with contractual issues, and I wouldn't be able to give solutions to some of that complexity, but I know that it's really complex. And so you layer the culture and then kind of the structural problem, right, with the contractual issues. So that should give the personnel committee a lot of good work to do.
mhm. Well, I hope the fact that you bring that unique perspective, having been a former administrator, having been a student there, and now being on the regents, that and you seem to have a good handle on, you know, the culture and the structure, that you would be able to look into this and possibly come up with some reasonable changes as we, you know, and it's not complete 360 degree, but, you know, maybe a 45 degree, another 45, you know, during your term, that we make these changes along the way that lends to more fairness, it lends to building morale and building up the university. So
Just to be clear, when I was an administrator, I was a student services administrator. So I didn't deal with professor hiring and firing or
right.
salary. So that part of it. But now as an executive director, and then when I did my PhD, I also really looked at administration and higher education as a part of the study. So just to be clear about my background.
Just following up. So if teaching again is UH's main mission, then shouldn't the faculty be expected to teach at a higher percentage than they have equivalents for, or that they get reductions for?
So education, it is an educational institution, and the educational needs are highest in my mind. The Manoa is a research organization, so there are research obligations, and there are community service obligations too. And I think if you create a system that's accountable for how you trade off, right, and balance that work, and I think establishing those policies about how that accountability, what those trade-offs look like, so that there's fairness. I think that those systems exist pretty well structured in the community college level. I'm not sure. But yes, I think there needs to be a standard and a measurement. And teaching has got to be at our heart and soul.
Well, again, the policy 9.24.214 says instruction and not research, or, you know, instruction is the university's highest priority, comma, teaching remains the most important duty of its faculty. So yes, service is important and research, But again, that shouldn't be the main, if you taught somebody teaching 8 credit hours and getting service and research and everything taking up, 18 credit hours, something is not in balance, right? I mean, I don't care how fair that is and how it's granted, it just doesn't comport to the policy that teaching and instruction should be of the highest. I hear all the time from president, administrators say, well, we want to attract, we're R1 university, we want to attract the best and the brightest and the faculty for our students. Yet when the faculty is not in the class, underclassmen, they might be more doing with graduates, but they're not in, that the students who are actually paying the tuition are not getting the benefit of these highly paid, highly acclaimed professors, and you have people who, like former presidents or former chancellors who then tenure into their twilight years, and they do research and they don't go back into the classroom. Tom Apple is one of the few that's back in the classroom, but the students don't benefit from that, right? I mean,
And Senator, I just want to say that, over the years that I was at the university and as a student, there were some amazing professors who worked their butts off.
Yes.
And I know that in any large organization, in any state government, not just at the university, there's some resentment that comes from, gosh, I'm working my butt off and the person next to me maybe isn't doing as much. And I think that's why there needs to be that shift in culture and accountability. I did also have some professors who were really brilliant in their work, but couldn't instruct very well, and so there's also the art and craft of teaching that I think as a university, we need to support our instructors so that they have good. I recently learned that the word isn't pedagogy because that's children. There's another word for adults, but that they have good techniques and abilities as teachers and teach well. And again, I had brilliant teachers and I've worked with.
Just for the record, there are many excellent professors there and many who do work their butts off and are in there in the classroom. And so I just don't want it to say like, all professors, because it's not. And the average of 8 to 12 credit hours, there are many that are doing 15 credit hours, some are doing 18. So again, but the bulk seems to be, and it seems to come from Manoa, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, because I understand that that's where the average really drops when you go there. Now, in addition to that, there's also some negotiation being going on currently that will allow faculty to teach at a higher differential for a course, like the executive MBA program, for example, that's being taught out of, or is being run out of RCUH, which is really, to me, not in the mission for RCUH and needed to be brought back to the university under the outreach college. But then the professors or the people that were teaching that was getting a higher, like a 3-to-1 or 2-to-1, more like 3-to-1 pay compared to what they would teach in their normal 24 credit hours. So this differential is being negotiated to allow that to continue with the outreach college over and above when they go, their overload. But the question that comes to my mind is, what is overload? If you're teaching 8 credit hours or 12 credit hours, and you've got, 14 credit hours or 12 credit hours of equivalence, and so it reaches the 24, now do you qualify for this differential? Because again, it's a teaching component. If you have time to teach that, then you should have time to teach within the 24 credit hours and not be given equivalence. Do you follow what I'm saying?
But And I don't know enough about the mechanism of that differential.
See, and I don't think the regions do either, and I don't think they care. So it gets negotiated by the administration and it gets put into place, and then people don't know that it's going on until it becomes problematic, and then years down the line, say, well, that's how we've always been doing. Because the ex-MBA program started with an executive order by Mortimer back in 1997 or something. And it was going on all these years, and nobody was aware that it was, well, I shouldn't nobody, but many of us didn't know it was being run out of RCUH until just a couple years. And now to move it over, it's been problematic, but it's finally getting done because whoever's created RCUH never intended them to teach courses. Are they going to teach law classes next?
That's, and I guess that raises for me a whole bunch of questions about how it was established. The regions need to establish all degrees. They need to establish all programs, right? So it goes before the regions. So
Like, how can the president give an executive order like that, and then it go on for two decades, and nobody's been aware of them? There's a number of other things we found that was being run through RCUH, revolving accounts, millions of dollars in revolving accounts, and it's being looked at now, and there's some changes going on now, but only because it was brought to my attention and I brought it up, that UH has been running things through RCUH because RCUH has exemptions in procurement, have exemptions, all kinds of exemptions, so they just run things whenever it's convenient through RCUH. So, and that's another thing that the Board of Regents need to pay close attention to, and it's that relationship to know what it is the president is actually doing and whether or not it comports with the policies of the region and of the University of Hawaii. So you have your work cut out for you. And we're counting on you.
And I understand, and as I'm listening, I have more and more. Maybe it is trepidation, but it's also more questions, and and things that there's so much to learn, and I think it's a very large and complex system, and I do want to roll up my sleeves and start to learn.
I think if you care and want to do something, then you will, but it just seems that there's a board mentality, and when we question people here, they tell us, because obviously we've been confirming regions and we ask very similar questions and hear similar answers, not like yours though, but similar type of answers. But then they get onto the board and then you read the minutes and no questions are being asked. Or no, what I'm saying? It's like, but I watched the video, they said this, but they're not doing what they said they were going to do. So it is a little frustrating for us on our end, which is why we end up introducing measures.
And I hear the concerns, and I guess I'm starting to want to learn more about how the information comes in front of the board, and what kinds of packages, right? And then how I can interface with that to get the answers to the questions. So I look forward to learning how those things happen, and then kind of maybe unpacking some of that if I can.
Members, any other questions?
I just wanted to make a comment when talking, and I think it's really accountability when you talk about whether the chair or the dean should be making the decisions on the number of credit hours, etc. Number one, I don't think the chair has any idea of what the total budget is, and does that mean you're going to have to hire another professor to fulfill the other student hours that are left without a professor teaching, and is that budget there? Because if it's not, and they can make it work for that semester or that year, what happens the next year? That's where the budgets start ballooning. So to me, it is a question of accountability, and they don't care because they don't pay the bill. But we have to care because we pay the bill, but we have to make sure that the students who are paying, their tuition, full tuition, whatever, that they're getting the bang for the buck, that they're getting the credit hours that they deserve with a good professor, not someone who's half his mind is on, moving on to get his, higher pay or differential, whatever. So.
Yeah, and that kind of goes to the agility to the university to address the needs of the students that are there, because it changes, right? We were asking Gabe about enrollment, and this generation of students, the young students anyways, quite different in needs than the generation even just 10 years ago, because the world is so different. And how do we help have a university that's able to address changing needs, right? And so sometimes because of those structures, they can't be agile, right? And it's just such a big shift, and there must be some ways to address student needs better.
I think change gets resisted, especially in an entity as large as the University of Hawaii. But it amazes me, I have seen in the last 2 years that when the university really wants something done, they break their legs over it. I mean, Ching Field went up in record time, and Atherton, and yet we have other areas that have been lagging for 5, 6, 10 years. Mauna Kea, the admin rules didn't get adopted for 8 years. I mean, so it's like when they want something done, they get it done. And it just tells you that, there's no priority in it. They just dragging their feet, and they do that purposely said, yeah, we're working on it. Would ask about it. Oh yeah, we've been working on it. But we've been working on it is, kind of a catch-all phrase to get rid of us and think we're going to go away, and we don't go away. So final question is, after everything, or you still want to be Board of Regents?
Yes.
Okay, I hope so. We didn't scare you, but we do want you to know. And again, we come from an area of wanting the best for our students and for the university. And I know I hear comments that, I'm trying, to kill the university and so forth. And, I hate the university, and that's the farthest thing. I attended university 2 years, my freshman and sophomore year before I transferred.
So we actually can have quite a gem of the university,
Yes.
and in many ways we do.
Yes.
But we need it. We need to solve these problems now. The university is the best place.
So thank you. We appreciate your willingness to serve, and look forward to your leadership on the Board of Regents.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you, Laurie.
Okay, members, with no other items on the agenda, shall we just go right into decision making?
Sure.
Okay, so and Lori, we're gonna vote today, but this won't be going to the floor. I don't know, it'll be 3 days, maybe 4 days. We'll inform you if you want to come in or not. You don't have to be here when we do the actual vote on the floor. But
Do I stay?
well, you don't have to stay. If you want to stay to watch the vote, you can, or you can leave. I know it's late, so you won't offend us if you leave. Okay, for GM 819 for the Hawaii Commission for National and Community Service, nominee Suzette Robinson, recommendation is to advise and consent.
GM 819, advise and consent. Chair, your vote.
Aye.
Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Keith Agaran.
Aye.
Senator Wakai, excused. Senator Favela, excused. Measures adopted, Madam
Okay,
Chair.
same recommendation for GM 820 for the Hawaii National Commission and Community Service, Richard Setter. Same recommendation to confer, advise and consent.
Chair votes aye.
Chair votes aye.
Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Keith Agaran.
Aye.
Other members excused.
Thank you. And for GM 807 for Board of Regents, Gabe Lee for a term to expire 6/30/27. Recommendation is to advise and consent.
Chair votes aye.
Chair votes aye.
Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Keith Agarone.
Aye.
Senators Wokai and Favela excused.
And for GM 806, for the advise and consent for Lori Tochiki for the Board of Regents, recommendation is to advise and consent. Chair votes aye.
Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Keith Agarone.
Aye.
Wokai and Favela excused. Measures adopted.
Congratulations, we are adjourned.